The gunslingers of the American Wild West have become as famous as any figures in American history. In fact, names like Jesse James, Wyatt Earp, and Billy the Kid are more easily recognizable than the names of many U.S. presidents. And while many of the most notorious men and women of this era are remembered for their fast tempers and even faster guns, they have come to represent not just what many consider the most violent period of American history. They represent the pioneering spirit that tamed a frontier fraught with inherent dangers. A romantic spirit that lives on in the hearts and minds of millions of Old West enthusiasts even today. But who can be said to have been the deadliest gunslinger of them all? The one with the most kills? The one said to have been the fastest? Or perhaps the one with the reputation for being the most ruthless? Whatever the measure, here are 10 men and women who came to define what it meant to be bad to the bone during this age when men and women lived by the gun. Respected lawman and Pinkerton detective Thomas Horn was in actuality one of the most cold-blooded killers of the Old West. After making a name for himself as a scout and tracker in the late 1880s, Tom was hired as a tracker, bounty hunter, and then promoted to detective by the famous Pinkerton Detective Agency. Quickly becoming known for his volatile temper and propensity for violence, he was forced to resign his position with the agency after becoming linked to the murders of 17 people. Following his resignation, Horn quickly developed a reputation as a killer for hire and is said to have been responsible for killing some 20 cattle rustlers over the course of several years. Horn was finally caught and hanged in 1901 after being linked to the murder of a 14-year-old boy, who ironically, some historians believe he was actually innocent of killing. Even so, Tom Horn is believed to have committed as many as 50 murders in his 43 years of life. One of the darkest and most sadistic figures of the Old West was James "Killer" Miller, a paid assassin and gunslinger known to have killed at least 14 people, though legend has that number closer to 50. Also known as Deacon Jim, because he regularly went to church and did not smoke or drink. Miller openly stated that he would kill anyone for money, his rate reportedly somewhere between $150 to $2,000 per kill, and is rumored to have gunned down everyone from political figures to famed Sheriff Pat Garrett. One legendary tale involves a confrontation with Sheriff Bud Fraser over Miller's alleged involvement in the assassination of a cattle rancher. Though Fraser is said to have fired first, Miller proceeded to shoot him 6 times. It was later reported that the clever Miller had been wearing a metal plate under his shirt, which had blocked Fraser's bullets. Described as cold to the core, Miller's murderous days finally ended in 1909 when he was arrested in Oklahoma for the murder of A. Gus Bobbitta, a U.S. Marshal. After a lynch mob of some 40 people stormed the prison, Miller and 3 other outlaws were dragged to a nearby barn and hanged. Prior to being hanged, Miller, who insisted on being allowed to wear his hat, is said to have shouted, "Let her rip," and voluntarily jumped off the box to his death. His body and the bodies of the other 3 men lynched that night were left hanging for hours until a photographer could be found to immortalize the event. The son of a Methodist preacher, John Wesley Harden was named after the founder of the Methodist faith, but from the very beginning of his life was anything but pious. At age 14, John stabbed a boy in the schoolyard for taunting him. A year later, he shot and killed an ex-slave who had been his friend, but who had sought revenge after Harden allegedly scratched his face during roughhousing. To avoid arrest, he then went into hiding, and though warned by his brother that authorities knew his whereabouts, chose not to run, killing all the Union soldiers who tried to take him into custody. Becoming known for carrying 2 pistols in holsters strapped to his chest, which enabled him to be one of the fastest guns in history, he then shot down 3 more men in various gunfights while on the lam. After many skirmishes with the law, Harden was finally captured in 1878, convicted, and sent to jail for 17 years. During his time incarcerated, ironically, he earned a law degree and even practiced as a lawyer after his release. Shot in the back of the head while playing dice in El Paso, Texas, Harden died August 19, 1895. In his relatively short life, John Wesley Harden is credited with killing of no fewer than 42 people. One of the most famous lawmen of all time, Wyatt Earp was also an accomplished gunslinger who was greatly feared by the outlaws of the era. After traveling the boomtowns of Wichita, Dodge City, and the famous city of Tombstone, where he became one of the most feared and respected lawmen of all time, he then participated in some of the most legendary shootouts of the Old West, most notably the famous gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881, where he and brothers Morgan and Virgil and close friend Doc Holliday confronted a group of cowboys who'd recently robbed a stagecoach. 3 of the cowboys were killed in the fight, and everyone but Wyatt was wounded. The gunfight caused a huge scandal, with compadres of the cowboys soon retaliating, wounding Wyatt's brother Virgil and killing Morgan. Earp and Holliday then led a team of gunfighters on what has become known as their vendetta ride, during which they killed an estimated 30 men connected with the murders. All told, Earp is credited with killing between 8 to 30 outlaws, and his exploits remain among the most famous stories in the annals of the American Old West. The most legendary of all gunslingers, Henry "Billy the Kid" McCarty, started his life of crime with petty theft and horse thievery, but is said to have made his first kill at the age of 18. Though often portrayed as a cold-blooded killer, history shows that he actually entered a life of crime out of necessity, not meanness. In fact, people who knew him called him brave, resourceful, loyal, and possessing a remarkable sense of humor. In 1877, during the so-called Lincoln County War, Henry was deputized and rode with lawmen seeking to arrest a group of corrupt businessmen, including Lawrence Murphy and James Dolan, known to be responsible for the murder of an innocent rancher, John Tunstall. Billy's group, the Regulators, however, soon became known for their unprovoked violence and were themselves labeled outlaws. Unaffected by their new status, the Regulators then proceeded to go on a killing spree, during which 3 people were mercilessly gunned down in the course of just 3 days, including a sheriff and his deputy. Hounded by law enforcement, the group was eventually disbanded, with Billy managing to elude capture. After a number of run-ins with authorities, Billy was finally captured and sentenced to death, but managed to escape after getting hold of a weapon and gunning down the 2 men guarding him. After 3 months on the lam, he was killed in 1881 by the equally famous Sheriff Pat Garrett. All told, Billy the Kid is said to have killed a total of 21 men, 1 for each year of his life, though this number is often regarded as exaggerated. After his death, such a mystique had surrounded this famous gunslinger that numerous men claimed to be him in hopes of garnering celebrity, even at the risk of being gunned down themselves. One of the lesser-known but more violent pistoleros of the Old West, gunfighter and one-time lawman John King Fischer, was in and out of prison from the age of 16. By the early 1870s, Fischer became known as a bandit when he joined a group of outlaws whose specialty was raiding ranches in Mexico. Though quickly becoming known for his flamboyant style of dress, always seen wearing brightly colored clothes, and signature twin ivory-handled pistols, it was his propensity for aggression that singled him out. Among his many exploits, he was known for gunning down 3 members of his own gang during a dispute over money, and then killing 7 Mexican bandits a short time later. In his most famous gunfight, Fischer is said to have taken on 4 Mexican cowboys single-handedly, which after hitting one with a branding iron, outdrew another. In 1884, Fischer was ambushed and killed, along with gunslinger Ben Thompson, by friends of a man Thompson had previously killed in a gunfight. Although not as well known as many of the others, Dallas Stoutenmeyer was a feared lawman in his day and is known for participating in more gunfights than most of his better-known contemporaries. After serving in the Civil War, during which he was wounded several times, Stoutenmeyer moved to El Paso, Texas to serve as sheriff, a town famous for having no law whatsoever. Only 3 days after signing on, Dallas was involved in one of the West's most legendary gunfights, the infamous 4 dead in 5 seconds gunfight, in which he shot 4 men dead, demonstrating his extraordinary prowess with a 6-shooter. A few days later, friends of the men Stoutenmeyer had gunned down hired the town drunk to assassinate him. Dallas, who by some accounts had foreknowledge of the plan, got the drop on the man and shot him 8 times. This marked the beginning of what would become a blood spree perpetrated by Stouten, killing 6 more men in gunfights over the next year, gaining a reputation as one of the most fearless lawmen in all Texas. In 1882, Stouten was shot to death by a group of outlaws during a verbal confrontation. Born in Carthage, Missouri, Myra May Shirley grew up with Cole Younger and later befriended the James brothers. When the James Younger gang needed a place to hide out, they often stayed at the Shirley family farm, earning her the nickname the Bandit Queen. In 1866, Belle married Jim Reed, a former Confederate Army guerrilla who tried to live the respectable life of a farmer, but when that failed, fell in with the Stars, a Cherokee Indian family known for horse stealing. Along with his wife's friends, the Jameses and Youngers, Myra and Jim planned and executed many successful heists. Jim, however, was killed while trying to escape from a deputy sheriff who had arrested him for one such robbery. After the loss of her husband, Belle made her living organizing and planning robberies, as well as fencing stolen goods, and is said to have shot at least 3 men during these years. Known for seducing law enforcement officers to get what she wanted, when she couldn't bribe them, she then married Sam Starr in 1880, who after 2 years of horse rustling, were caught and convicted of stealing horses. Released a year later, the two went right back into crime, with Belle said to have murdered at least 2 more men who got in her way. Belle was herself shot to death on February 3, 1889, 2 days before her 41st birthday, while riding home from the general store. Her killer has never been found. Gambler, reluctant gunfighter, and sometimes lawman, though lesser known than many of his contemporaries, Ben Thompson was well acquainted with most of the famous gunslingers of the Old West. Starting his criminal career at the age of 17, he stabbed and killed a fellow gambler whom he caught cheating him at poker. Known for being lightning fast on the draw, Thompson gained a reputation as a gunfighter after killing 2 men in a shootout on Christmas Eve, 1876. Trying to escape this reputation, he then tried to go straight, taking a job as marshal of Austin, Texas, but was forced to resign after killing a local theater owner named Jack Harris during an argument. Thompson was himself killed in 1884, along with gunfighter John King Fischer, when friends of Harris gunned the two down while watching a performance at an opera house.